Alright, Touch Trove fam, let's talk about the one Apple product that's been sitting in the corner for years like, hey, remember me? Because according to the latest Apple TV leaks and 2026 rumors, we might finally be getting a brand new Apple TV 4K in 2026, most likely landing around summer, and this could be the biggest Apple TV upgrade we've seen in a long time. And today, I'm breaking down everything we know so far, the most likely Apple TV 2026 release window, the chip upgrade you should actually care about, why Apple Intelligence is basically forcing Apple's hand, what WWDC 2026 has to do with all of this, and the features that could finally make the Apple TV feel next-gen again. So yeah, if you've been waiting to upgrade, or you've been wondering whether it's worth buying an Apple TV right now, you're going to want to watch this one all the way through. Now first, let's set the stage with where the Apple TV currently stands. The current Apple TV 4K hasn't had a meaningful update in years. We're basically looking at a device that, while still smooth and reliable, has been left behind in Apple's bigger roadmap. The model most people are using right now is powered by the A15 Bionic, which originally debuted in the iPhone 13 lineup back in 2021. And to be clear, the A15 is still a solid chip for streaming, casual gaming, and day-to-day tvOS performance. Menus are fast, apps open instantly, 4K playback is fine, and overall it's still Apple smooth. But here's the problem. In 2026, Apple doesn't just want smooth, Apple wants AI everywhere. And that brings us to the real reason this Apple TV upgrade feels inevitable. Let's talk Apple Intelligence, because that's the big headline. Right now, the current Apple TV simply can't run Apple Intelligence features. It's basically locked into standard tvOS functionality, and in Apple's world, that's not acceptable anymore. Apple's strategy is crystal clear. Apple Intelligence needs to expand across the ecosystem: iPhone, iPad, Mac, and eventually your living room. So for Apple to bring Apple Intelligence to tvOS, the Apple TV hardware has to level up. And according to the leaks, the chip we keep hearing about is the A17 Pro, paired with 8GB of RAM. That combo matters, because it's widely seen as the minimum requirement for Apple Intelligence features to run properly on device. So if the leak is right, the Apple TV 2026 could jump from A15 all the way to A17 Pro, and that is a massive leap for a device that basically hasn't changed much in years. Now let's connect the dots with WWDC 2026, because this is where it gets really interesting. WWDC is Apple's developer event, usually happening in June. And the rumors are saying WWDC 2026 is going to be heavily focused on Apple Intelligence, especially new Siri upgrades. We've also been hearing noise that Apple may expand AI capabilities by integrating with external models in some way. There's talk around Google's Gemini being involved for certain features and broader intelligence support. Now, whether that exact partnership detail ends up being true or not, the key point remains. If Apple is about to unveil a new AI-powered version of tvOS at WWDC 2026, developers are going to need hardware that can actually run it, and that's the issue. As of right now, Apple doesn't sell an Apple TV that's Apple Intelligence ready. So if Apple wants developers to test an Apple Intelligence-enabled tvOS beta from June through late summer, Apple has two options. Option 1. Introduce a new Apple TV around WWDC 2026, so developers can start building and testing immediately. Option 2. Delay Apple Intelligence on tvOS until later, which would go against Apple's current push to roll Apple Intelligence across the lineup as fast as possible. And based on how Apple usually operates, Option 1 is looking way more likely, so that's why a summer 2026 Apple TV release window makes a lot of sense, especially if Apple plans to seed tvOS betas and push new AI features into the living room experience. Now let's get into what this A17 Pro upgrade could actually unlock, because this isn't just about faster menus. Yes, performance will improve. Yes, apps will load even faster. Yes, multitasking could be smoother. But the real upgrade is what it enables. With Apple Intelligence on Apple TV, the dream scenario looks like this. You talk to Siri in a more natural way and actually get useful results. You can say something like, "Show me the scene where he says that line in the courtroom," or Find a movie like this but funnier, under 2 hours and not scary. Or summarize what I missed in the last episode. And instead of Siri giving you the classic, "Here's what I found on the web," it actually understands your request across apps, especially inside Apple TV Plus and supported streaming services. That's where Apple wants to go, and that's why this upgrade isn't optional anymore. Now let's talk about another thing that could finally change: the design. One of the more interesting rumors floating around is that Apple could switch materials. Right now, the Apple TV box is basically one of the last Apple products that still feels a bit plasticky. And Apple has been pushing hard on eco-focused manufacturing and premium materials across its product lineup. So it wouldn't be surprising if the Apple TV 2026 gets a redesigned chassis, possibly aluminum, maybe a different finish, and an overall more Apple-like feel. And if that happens, I could easily see Apple offering 2 color options: a silver space gray style finish and a darker black option for home theater setups. Nothing confirmed, but it would make the product feel fresh again without Apple having to reinvent the entire box. Now, features. This is where Apple TV fans have been begging Apple to catch up. Let's start with one of the most requested upgrades: HDMI pass-through and better audio pass-through support. A lot of home theater enthusiasts want more flexibility with advanced audio formats, cleaner signal routing, and fewer compatibility headaches when connecting soundbars, AV receivers, and TVs together. And if Apple is doing a real Apple TV 4K 2026 refresh, this is the moment where features like that finally make sense, because remember, Apple typically waits until a feature is widely adopted and stable before they commit to it in a mainstream product. And at this point, home theater users have been asking for these improvements for years, so a 2026 Apple TV that brings stronger HDMI handling, newer Dolby enhancements, and potentially better lossless audio support would instantly make it a more serious living room device. Now, what about the lineup? If Apple follows the pattern we already have, we'll likely see 2 versions again: a more basic Wi-Fi model with lower storage and a higher storage model with a built-in gigabit Ethernet port. That split has worked for Apple so far, and it makes sense. Casual users don't need Ethernet, and power users absolutely do, so don't expect Apple to simplify that. If anything, they'll keep the structure and push people toward the higher tier model for best experience. Now let's talk gaming, because this is the sleeper upgrade that nobody is discussing enough. If the Apple TV 2026 truly gets the A17 Pro, you're not just getting Apple Intelligence readiness, you're also unlocking a much stronger GPU setup and hardware features like ray tracing support. Now, does that mean your Apple TV becomes a PlayStation 5? No. Let's keep expectations realistic. But what it could mean is Apple pushing Apple Arcade harder and potentially expanding console-style gaming on the TV. We've already seen that chips like the A17 Pro can run serious titles on other Apple devices. If Apple wants Apple TV to be more than a streaming puck, this is their chance to turn it into a light console experience, especially for people already using controllers in Apple Arcade. And with technologies like MetalFX upscaling, Apple could make games look sharper without needing insane raw performance. Still, I'm not expecting native 4K at 120 FPS. Realistically, we're talking 30 FPS targets for heavier titles, maybe 60 FPS for optimized games, and some clever upscaling. Tricks to make it look good on a big screen, but even that, if done right, would be a huge win for Apple TV as a platform. So the big question: when is the new Apple TV coming? Based on the leak-driven logic, the cleanest timeline is this: WWDC 2026 in June. Apple previews the next tvOS with Apple Intelligence-related features. Summer 2026. Apple launches the new Apple TV hardware, so developers and users can actually run those features. Later 2026. Full tvOS rollout with Apple Intelligence features refined and stabilized. Again, nothing is official until Apple says it, but from a strategy standpoint, this is the first time in years where the Apple TV upgrade timeline actually feels forced by Apple's bigger plans. Apple Intelligence basically makes the Apple TV refresh unavoidable. Now I want to throw it to you. Are you waiting for the Apple TV 2026 upgrade? Would Apple Intelligence on tvOS be enough to make you buy one? And what's the one feature you want Apple to finally add? HDMI pass-through, better audio, a redesign, or legit gaming support? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I'm genuinely curious where everyone stands on this one. If you enjoyed this breakdown and you want more Apple leaks, release date updates, and real-world feature predictions, make sure you hit like, subscribe to Touch Trove, and turn on notifications. Because the moment we get more Apple TV 4K 2026 details, I'm covering it. Alright fam, that's it for this one. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.